Therefore, you become accustomed, you control a certain thing or a certain habit, and even though it is a habit, it sometimes affects you in a state of lethargy, and you become weak in spirit, or have no energy. You are not allowed to do this permissible thing, and you sit sometimes or for a week or more, but this permissible thing is not permissible. The question is why? Although it is a habit practiced on us, we persist in it to the point where we may lose practicing this habit. Today we will give you the great secret in the third and final part of the explanation of the book. Power used by author Shard Wayne in this video, such as the book Rich Dad and Poor Dad, the book Think, The Weight of Wealth, the book The 7 Habits of Most Effective People, the book How to Influence Others and Gain Friends. What now? The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, The Art of Indifference, and the book The Power of Habits that we are going to explain now. Not only that, but also in very famous novels and stories like yours, France. My friend. The follower, that is, between 1960 and 1970, or more accurately 1969, a research center decided that it would conduct an experiment on children no more than 4 years old. They brought them into a room and placed in front of them a piece of marshmallow, a child, and a piece of marshmallow. I expect the 1 million temptation that happened when the lecturer or mentor told them what he liked. He eats 1 marshmallow, let him eat a marshmallow now, and whoever is waiting for me to finish his work and come back, I will give you 2 marshmallows. He gave them this direction and went outside. The room that my friend, the follower, got, and as expected, there were children no more than 4 years old. I certainly tempted them. In the piece of marshmallow they ate it, but 30% of these children, my follower friend, were able to withstand the return of this wave and were able to eventually obtain 2 pieces from the marshmallow. The experiment ended here. No, the experiment has still begun, my friend. The observers began to monitor the behavior of these students from that experiment until they reached the age of graduate studies at the university, and they noticed, my dear honey, that the students were able to withstand until the return of that wave. They obtained the highest grades in studies and the highest scores on student aptitude tests. The same IQ tests meant they had the opportunity to enter the best universities and were able to form relationships. They were strong, adapted to their difficult circumstances in life, and coped with many problems. Their personalities were stronger, more determined, and more determined. They were successful by all standards. My follower friend, this issue did not happen by chance, and the reason behind this thing is the secret that we will talk about in this video, which is willpower. Look, old man, and by the research centers that were studying these behaviors and studying willpower specifically. All their lives they believed that willpower is a skill that you can acquire and learn, or that one day and night you have a strong will or the skill of willpower. And what happened is that there was a scientist named Mark Mora, and I also pronounced his name in Arabic or in the Arabic language, so I don't know whether I pronounced it correctly or not. In general, let's say her name is Mark. This scientist was part of the team that was studying the subject of willpower and other things, but why, on the subject of willpower, he told you that willpower is something strange and different. He said to you, it is true that I have willpower and that I accomplish many of the tasks that I always want to accomplish, and that I am regular and persistent in doing them, to the point that they become habits and customs for me, as we said in the parts that are gone, that is, you sort them out almost unconsciously, he told you, but sometimes my resolve fades and I don't want to get out of bed. They are the ones like boy, for example. I do not want to do the tasks I want to do. Sometimes I have a life goal that I want to achieve, and I always strive for it really hard and diligently, but at some point I start to wither and grow old. I have no motivation, and I have the energy to step, not even a single step towards this goal, even if you desperately need it. He says, if willpower is a skill, why should we lose it? Means? You know, my friend who follows the skill, what a person loses, he loses if he continues to practice it. Is it true or not? For example, if you are a painter. Very skilled, of course. Congratulations to the very beautiful painters. Beauty makers. I love them, love them. When you are a very skilled painter and practice drawing constantly without any interruption, even though there is always an interruption, but let us say continuously without any interruption, then it would be very impossible. He loses the skill of drawing. He does not lose it unless he stops practicing drawing for a long period of time. Most often, what he loses is that it is there, but he just needs to regain it. But you have lost the skill. This is something impossible, so says the scientist Mark. If willpower is a skill, why should I lose it? Why do days, weeks, or even months pass by? Because my willpower is so weak and I stop doing the things I always do. Willpower is not a skill, and in fact this observation was correct, so he decided to conduct an experiment, but on adults whose number ranged between from 5 to 19 people. He told them, "We are bringing you today and we are going to do a tasting experiment for you. We would like you to help us conduct an experiment on the sense of taste." Of course that was a goal. The experiment was a test. Willpower tells you that this group of people entered a room, and the room they entered did not smell of baked goods. There were baked goods in the room, and their smell was very beautiful, because the baked goods were fresh in every sense of the word. Fresh, it was so soft, with a beautiful moonlit surface dotted with small pieces of chocolate, and because the baked goods were a bit hot, the pieces of chocolate were somewhat melted. Hello, as if I can imagine it, my friend. Follower. He told you that each person had a plate and there were two things in it, a piece of these baked goods, and the second thing was pieces of radish, Radish, imagine, radish. Of course, the smell of radish is strong, but because the baked goods, as I told you, were very, very fresh. The smell of the baked goods was overwhelming the smell of dawn. The important thing is that we should not tell you that half of these people were ordered to eat only baked goods and never approach dawn, and the other one came, exactly the opposite of these orders, eating radishes. These baked goods are never close to anything. There was a large window in the room. Those outside the room could see what was inside, and those inside could not see what was outside, like the windows in the interrogation rooms. They gave them these orders and they came out. Of course, they were adults, my friend. The observer would certainly not behave like children and eat marshmallows, no. In fact, all the people in the hall adhered to this test. They were ordered to eat baked goods, and they enjoyed whatever was delicious, and signs of joy were already present on their facial expressions, especially when eating radishes. I will not tell you, their condition is deplorable. He tells you that some of them were holding the bread, meaning such and such, and inhaling it a little, and some of them reached the point where they licked the chocolate a little, and returned the bread. The evidence is that they resisted and succeeded in the end by complying with those orders. Well, the experiment is over. It is still an experiment that has begun. After a short period of time, the supervisor entered and gave them a riddle. He said to them, "Do you want to draw this geometric shape without removing the pen?" Who is talking about this? You know the puzzle. This is what draws a square. I don't know what it is. A line came out of it without removing it and without repeating it, meaning most of these things, and they gave them a puzzle telling you that it was impossible to solve in the first place, and they said, "Come on, the puzzle will only take you 5 minutes," and the one who had finished or almost given up on the solution said to them, "This bell should be pressed." He did, and we know that he finished, and the mentor came out and the mentor left and did not give them 5 minutes. He sat down 5:40, and he also told you that the mentors began monitoring the actions of these people, and they noticed that those who ate the baked goods continued to try to solve this impossible puzzle. For a long period of time, some of them reached half an hour of trying. Imagine half an hour, and trying to draw this geometric shape without being able, and yet they keep trying, he tells you, but the average of their attempts was that from the first one he finished to the last one. The average time spent was 19 minutes. Each one of them is trying to solve this puzzle, this average one. But as for our brothers with the radishes, he tells you that from the beginning of the solution they were muttering incomprehensible words. They are destroyed. I mean, my follower friend, they are destroyed. They were really devastated, to the point that some of them were cursing the experiment, and some of them cursed the lecturers, and said, "This is a stupid puzzle, and this is a stupid experiment, and I won't let you in here," and from that point on, we reached a state of boredom. I won't tell you how long he spent trying to solve the puzzle for 8 minutes. Imagine this is 19 minutes and this is 8 minutes. The topic is a little strange. It is true that when I read the experiment frankly, I expected that the opposite would happen. I expected that those with radishes who were able to resist their cravings and who did not like baked goods would continue trying this puzzle for a longer period. This is what I actually expected. I swear to God, the friend of the follower. But I was shocked that the opposite happened. The scientist Mark S. tells you to reduce this experience that willpower is a muscle, not a skill. It is a muscle that is exhausted, exercised, and gained as well. This talk is dangerous, my friend. The follower is dangerous, who eats radishes and resists their desires against delicious baked goods. Once their willpower is exhausted, and they are exhausted with the Tao. Please, if you have reached this part of this clip, if you do not get out of this complete passage except with this information that you correct, then I will be grateful to you. And among those who are thankful until the hour comes, it is exhausted by the signifier, not by the Tao. This is called a window, meaning it means that a specific thing penetrates through it, light, air, etc. penetrates. As for the word we want, it means running out, finishing or running out of quantity. That is, what is important is that he tells you that their willpower has been exhausted. By God, you are done with the burden of eating radishes, and then you give him a puzzle that is impossible to solve. He had no energy, and his will muscle was very weak. He could not even bear to solve the puzzle. Quite the opposite for the people who ate baked goods, because I did not deliver the puzzle to them. Their will muscle was not exhausted. He had willpower. He did not use anything of it anymore. Therefore, he had patience and thoughtfulness as he tried to solve something impossible. The solution, of course, followed Char's comment on this experiment and told you that this is why some people were interested in this topic and started their day by performing the most heavy and difficult tasks. Because he knows that if he finishes this task at the beginning of the day, he will not be able to do it at the end of the day, after work, fatigue, and misery, and from that point on, he will no longer have energy, or at least willpower. His willpower is exhausted during the day, so he is no longer able to do the most difficult and arduous tasks, and God Almighty has focused on this with me. I really noticed it recently in my life. At first, I used to go to the club at the end of the day or before the end of the day, and this thing really made me tired, because if I went to the club in almost the end of the day or before the end of the day, I would not be able to do anything after that, so my day would almost end at the club. So I decided on my last leg to the club that it would be early in the morning, because for me it is almost one of the heaviest tasks, especially when I was returning, and I noticed a big difference. I noticed that it started giving me energy. God Almighty more than exhausts it. The people I have on Snapchat have taught me this thing, and do you know what happened to me? The bottom line, of course, is that the world market discovered that will is a muscle. You can train it, my friend. You can acquire it, but you need to exercise and strengthen it. In a person, it is the muscle of his will. Very, very weak, he is unable to commit to making his bed, and in a person who has a very strong willpower, his life is organized in an impossible way. You imagine him making his bed and his place and his room, and even his life and his time and everything in order, and he is able to perform so many tasks. He produces every day what another person produces for 3 or 4 days, and he is committed to the thing, and he continues to do it, because his will muscle is strong and exercised. Right? The question is, to what level is your will muscle strong? Is she really strong or weak? My friend, the follower and the topic, this or the muscle of will, I read before in Steve Richard Covey's book First Bleeds and Wars or First Things First, and he was the first person I heard say the muscle of will, and I very much liked his talk about this subject, and I intended to explain it to you when I explained this book, but I did not know if the subject was actually scientific experiments, which is what I expected from the first philosophy of Stephen Covey. The subject came out, not real experiments, and they actually discovered that it was a will muscle. They likened it to a muscle. Let's say, Stephen Covey, writing when I was talking about this topic, was saying that if you want to reach a point in your life where you are committed in your life to time, tasks, the club, relationships, and so on, you must exercise your will muscle. You must not give it strong and heavy tasks all at once. And suddenly no, she won't last long. He told you, you have to train her with pills. A pill, for example, puts you on a regimen for 3 or 4 months that commits you to one very simple thing. For example, you commit to sleeping at a specific time and waking up at a specific time no matter the cost. That's it, it's over. This is the first mission. 3 months later. For 4 months, when you commit to it, you add the gym, so for another 3 or 4 months, you sleep at a specific time. You wake up at a specific time and go to the club. After a period of time, 2 additional tasks were added. And so you take the subject. Increasingly, exercise your muscles to commit to simple tasks, and then bigger and bigger tasks. This is what I tried and applied. It is actually true, and pay attention when you wither after a certain period and reduce your tasks and begin to neglect them, and your will muscle is weak, as if you are completely quitting the gym. Your muscle weakens, and you become unable to lift the same weights that you were lifting before quitting. This is the will muscle, and the will muscle, O long-lived person, is the reason that sometimes leaves you with a certain habit. You fix it. It's always like going to the gym. For example, you reach a point where your strength withers and you can't go to the gym today, tomorrow, etc., and the reason behind this is that there are things in your life that are confused, die like a knee. Your sleep is ruined. You are ruined by the club. Instead of going to him at the beginning of the day, you will go to him at the end of the day. These details have exhausted your willpower, leaving you withering, lack of enthusiasm, and lack of energy, and you cannot practice one of the habits that you do daily. You know the reason, my friend, the follower. I think it is as clear as the sun in the middle of the sky. I have to say it in the middle of the sky, and he will of course tell you the scientist Mark who applied this experiment, and Charles, the author of this book, also agrees with him. He told you so that you can have a muscle. Strong will, you must have self-control. We go back to the experience of young children, the experiment they gave them in the 60s, it was not about willpower, no, it was about self-control. The child who was able to control himself was able to control the energy of his willpower, and is able, however, he passed by her, so his life was going on this path, and you are exactly the same story. If you want to exercise your willpower, be flexible, control yourself, my brother, and by God Almighty, the simplest thing is sleep. Believe me, if you are not able to set a pattern for your sleep that you adhere to, believe me, your topic will be difficult in committing to very difficult and large tasks. And God Almighty, if we go back to thinking about a topic, for example, divorce, then this is one of the matters or phenomena that are very, very widespread. With us, we are young people recently, and frankly, I expect our lifestyle, before marriage, which does not include any commitment, or its commitments may not go beyond religious duties, family duties, and work hours, which is the reason. What made us enter into marital relationships is that we do not bear the burden of responsibility for them. We do not have self-control, we do not have the energy, and we do not have the strength of will to try to succeed. We bear the pressures of this relationship, we adapt to it, and by God Almighty, I expect a very strong reason for this matter, and I even know there are many people on the channel who came from the Rich Dad Poor Dad series, and their dream is that it always leads to wealth. Believe me, you will achieve it, but be sure that the path to wealth is difficult, as I told you before, and it requires tremendous strength of willpower. Something is not natural. If you do not have sleep or a specific sleep pattern, a specific time when you sleep, a specific time you wake up at it, and a specific pattern during the week with specific tasks, believe me, you will not reach wealth, believe me, unless God wills it, of course, but you do not need strength. Willpower, it requires discipline. There are people who are unable to hold themselves in the mall. They enter the mall at the beginning of the month and spend their entire allowance. Where is the discipline? If you do not have the ability to control yourself in relation to a commodity, product, or service, how do you control yourself in very big matters? How do you have large sums of money in the exchange? How? You cannot? Believe me, you will not be able to avoid this reality in life. You must exercise your willpower and exercise it with self-control, and all of them are considered muscles that need exercise. And let me conclude this part, and this book is a beautiful and very touching story. Of course, the secret of the book after the third or fourth chapter is all stories about the topics that we covered in the first and second parts and in this part, so there is no need to tell many stories and the topic is considered filler, but let me conclude. You have this story that I see is true. Very, very impressive. A 9-year-old boy named Tra. But his life is tragic, very tragic, and I know that there are people who, to be honest, whose lives are painful, and perhaps one of them is following me or it could be you personally as well, but this affected me very much. This child who was 9 years old tells you that his father suddenly fell unconscious. He and his younger brothers flew into the kitchen and were seeing their father suffocating and his face turning blue. They were brothers accustomed to this sight. They tried to help their father, and they made him lie on his side so that he would not suffocate, and they told Travis to call an ambulance now immediately or go to the neighbors and have one of them come help us. The cause of their father's collapse was an overdose of drugs. Their father was an addict and their mother was an addict. Both of them were addicts and lived in the same house, but Travis this time was the first time he saw his father falling, fainting from an overdose. I mean, he was overdosed a lot, but he didn't catch that moment secretly, but on that day, he chased after him, and he went to see one of the neighbors, and called him and said, "No, my father suddenly fainted, and we don't know what's wrong with him." Although he knows what's wrong with his father. But the reason that made him lie, or because he was afraid of any rumor among the people of the neighborhood and at school, was that his father was a drug addict. The reason behind this is because one day the father of one of the students saw rumors about this news and how the school students started bullying this boy because his father is a drug addict. He did not want to live this experience. So he lied to their neighbor and said, "Abu loses consciousness and we don't know what to do with him. Please catch us. Help us. Naturally. Call 9 and emergency. And really, take the ambulance, whatever you like." He tells you the strange irony that his father was in the hospital sick and they were trying to treat him in the morning, afternoon, or evening. He is accused in the police department of drug possession and use. The news spread like wildfire. My follower friend. It became the thing he was afraid of. I'm only going to expose myself to bullying. Throughout his life, of course, his life at home is unspeakably disastrous. Economics only says that it was the day I woke up and saw that the house was tidy and breakfast was prepared. Life is clean and rosy. He says I was afraid because I knew that my mother and father had entered the hallucination stage. Imagine being afraid when he sees that the house is normal, because he knows that his mother and father are not normal. We are entering a period of hallucination. Oh God, something, God Almighty, is painful. Painful. May God heal you. Everyone is afflicted with these things. Every person afflicted with guardians who have this problem is appointed. And the houses, house secrets. Secrets, my tired friend, secrets. Look at people who think their lives are normal. They walk with you today at work, you think it is normal with you at school, with you at university, your friend, your colleague. You feel his life is beautiful and rosy when you see him laughing. You always think his life is rosy. Houses are secrets. When he reached the age of 16, our friend Travis stopped studying. He could not bear more than that. After that, the boy looked for jobs, and of course he actually got hired in small stores, and for every job he got, he was fired immediately after a period of time. But in the end, he ended up being fired, and he told you what was the reason behind that he was disturbed, emotionally disturbed, and had no ability to bear any client who raised his voice at him or mistreated him ever, so he wiped the tiles all the time. He could not bear it, and he also had periods of turmoil, to the point that suddenly, during work, he would begin to break down crying, as if he was recalling those old pictures that he had lived with his mother and father. A tragic life in every sense of the word. So he would always say, he stops in front of the mirror and says, "Okay, I have to change my life. It is unbelievable. The life I am living, I must learn discipline, and I must not go late to work. I go to work on time, and I leave work on time. My appearance is good, and my dealings with people are excellent. I have to change my situation, and although he used to say this thing to himself from now on from time to time, he always failed to be that regular, balanced, calm, and disciplined person. It was difficult for me. Our friend, the last job that Travis had before he was employed at Starbucks. He was also fired from it towards one of the managers of Starbucks company. He said, "We are going to open a branch soon, and it will be a coffee shop, and I would like you to work with us. Do you agree?" Sure, agree. Indeed, Travis joined Starbucks. This is a very great company. Of course, there are people who say that Starbucks is the Zionist entity. This is the comment I always hear. Please, before you write something like this, I want to verify the information. One of the things that oppress me most in life is rumors like this that spread, and the correct information that you want to spread among people does not spread. Like the word Nefada, for example, all people Nefada have run out, and they always read the image of the cave before they run out of words. Oh my God, even if we bring something similar to it again, but no, this correct information is spreading. No, why is it spreading? Wrong information is spreading. The important thing is what happened, my friend. The follower tells you that, after 25 years today, he is the manager of 2 Starbucks branches, and under his management is a large number of employees. He receives a salary of $44,000. My friend, the follower, has a retirement card. I don't know what it means. It is clear that it is a retirement card. He is strong for them in retirement, which means a beautiful type of retirement in American society, and his life is very beautiful and regular, and he is never late for work. He turned from that poor, weak, troubled person into the person of one of his employees. She was attacked by a customer. He came to her and comforted her while she was crying. He told her, "Don't be afraid. You are strong, you are brave, you will get through this." To imagine? This speech was a quote from the courses Starbucks offers to its employees from the first time they start working with them until the end. Imagine, the courses that Starbucks offers to its employees revolve around willpower. The willpower muscle develops this muscle in its employees and strengthens it. For this reason, our friend went from a disturbed and neglectful person whose life was a mess or chaos to a completely disciplined person who has strong self-discipline and a strong willpower muscle that completely changed his life. For the people who used to say that self-development courses do not change their lives. Human self-development books do not change a person's life. No, my love, they have changed the lives of 1 million people, and they will continue to change the lives of 1 million people. And this, Buck, it's true, and the sun is not covered by the sieve, as our Kuwaiti brothers say. I have changed, no, I have changed self. Development books, they change people's lives, and self-development courses, they change people's lives, the right courses and the right books, of course not the trivial books, with all due respect, which have no soul. No, I'm talking about books like The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, a heavy, heavy book, and by the way, you can see the book's explanations on the channel. You can go back and watch. Of course, Charles Doy says that he was Travis when he was 16 years old, and before he stopped school, he was riding with his mother. In the car. He asked her some questions, and a nice, light, calm conversation took place between them, and Travis said, "My mother admitted to me at that moment that she had made many mistakes in her life, but having me was one of the greatest things she had done in his life." I'll tell you, a few years after that conversation, Rufus received a call from his father telling him that he had an infection. It got into your mother's bloodstream because of one of the injections she was taking, and they are a carrier. She's on her way to the hospital now. Breakfast. Not only is it a long way to the hospital, he actually reached his mother, but she was unconscious, and unfortunately, my friend, a follower, she died half an hour after Tra arrived. But after they removed her care devices. The story is not over. Here, a week after this incident, Travis's father was taken to the hospital due to pneumonia. His lung had collapsed at that moment, and when she went to the hospital, a unit of nurses spoke to him in a very calm manner, and told him that the visiting time had ended, come tomorrow, and at that time Travis was shaken. Personal. He will be 10 years old, and there is still time for him to be registered with Starbucks. And after learning all these skills, not even the character that he built today, manager. The difference is huge between his personality today and his personality at that moment. After the nurse broke down and said to him, "Come tomorrow," he turned out to be just. Without uttering a word, hoping that he would return tomorrow to visit her father, but he died along with the tambourines. But on that night, from this person who was 16 years old in his life, there was a tragedy. From the first time the sun shone on life, to the person he reached today, the strong, disciplined person, the balanced one, the one with the character, and the one who manages a huge number of employees under him, and receives this annual salary, all of this changed after God's will through the willpower, to the point that one of the great sentences that he said, "You see," but about himself, he said, "You were born in an environment where your father and your mother are addicted to drugs. You develop a habit of relying on yourself and yourself. You know that if you revive yourself and rely on yourself, you will not gain anything from them." And as we said in the Art of Indifference series, the second part, suffering is the motivation towards improving for the better, and Rufus' suffering was his motivation towards improving for the better that he has achieved today.